How are you doing?
How long have you been there? I was checking Spotify.
I've been here for literally 30 seconds. So
oh my God, that is far longer than I would have liked, to be perfectly honest.
So Mike, how would you, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
Oh man, I mean, it's a funny thing, isn't it? When you go from, when there's that moment where you first tell someone that you're a singer for the first time, there's that emotional moment. I don't know, probably was about 7 or 8 years ago for me, I think, where you just are somebody that does songs in their bedroom or whatever. Yeah. And then there's just a point where someone says, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm a singer. And your whole life goes, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting that I've sort of decided that in my own head. So obviously I just say that I'm a singer now, which doesn't feel as, I don't know. It's a funny thing when you're from Liverpool, isn't it? Yeah. Because I don't think we're not really designed to big yourself up, really. Are you?
Yeah,
it's not what we. It's not really. We're sort of brought up to downplay everything as much as you can.
I think it's definitely it's certainly in my family, in like the family culture, like it's just, every Christmas is an opportunity to tear everyone to pieces. It's like taking the piss thing. So the second I've said anything remotely like, oh, do you know what? I spoke to this guy or whatever. It's like, shut up, Ben.
Yeah. and you know what? I actually think there's a lot. I think it's a very useful grounding, actually, especially when, when things start to pick up a little bit with record labels and stuff like that. And obviously they're all very good at, they've sort of figured out what it is that you want to hear, really, haven't they? And they'll just give it to you.
Yeah.
And especially when you start to release music, people that you've never met start telling you that you're brilliant. And it's not true. You haven't suddenly become brilliant, you know what I mean? But you don't really have you don't have any practice for that, do you?
That's a really interesting point. Yeah.
Obviously, you're not brilliant. They just really like that one song, or that people are just very kind and they're excited. The internet gets a bit excited.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite easy to believe people, isn't it? Because to
believe the hype, but also this is a really good. I wanted to talk. Do you know, this is perfect because I wanted to talk about this with somebody who would just kind of go there, But so it's interesting that you have. It's like, it's interesting to me what you said, the way the labels and stuff, they do tell you a lot of, not all, this is not like a whitewash, but it's, a lot of the time you meet people who tell you what you want to hear as opposed to what needs to be said or what needs to, whatever. And I encounter that not only with record labels, but I also encounter it in the education system and a bunch of other things, even on podcasts, I suppose. It's like everybody's aware that there's agendas and things and whatever. Can you do you think what you were saying just before about like humility, that sort of that ability that, which you're attributing to the Liverpool heritage, but like, do you think like a bit of humility about it is a really good defense against that?
It's so important. And I think the Liverpool thing, as I always felt, even, when, I don't know, you find yourself in New York and they're all telling you that you're great, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it's not true really, but you've always got this little Liverpool man on your shoulder just being like, all right, calm down, mate. It's a dangerous thing. Where you're just like, all right, chill out a bit, which has always been useful. And I think also just having Scouse friends.
Definitely.
I'm not attributing this just to Liverpool, by the way. But
and neither am I. Yeah, but you're right. It's something that's. I mean, we live. We're from Liverpool, so it's something where we see it. But I guess from everyone else watching this who would then go, oh, it can't be just a Liverpool thing. They're dead right. It's not just a Liverpool thing, but it's something that definitely seems to be ingrained in the culture of the city, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. And in a way that's just useful, I think, I think there's other sides to social media, for example. I don't think it's particularly useful being from Liverpool, only because we don't have a culture of saying, hi, everyone, here's what I think. And that's sort of what, especially Twitter, whatever it's called now, is basically just a collection of people going, hi, everyone, this is what I think.
Yeah.
And I struggle quite a lot with social media for that perspective.
Interesting. Do you have any particular tips or, anything that you've done, or, just sharing some of your experience with socials and like how you've got them happening or not happening, to whatever you agree?
I would say that I am the last person to ask for advice from social media, to be
interesting.
Interesting. And it's funny, really, it's sort of the one part, like we all do, but I do try really hard at my job, because it's a job, isn't it? That's the most way of looking at it, I think, and especially songwriting.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that really is it's a 9 to 5, as much as you'd like people to think that it's just inspiration just hits you from nowhere. Really, it's just getting in there and doing it, isn't it? Day after
having
day.
a go. Just getting involved. Did you get any formal education for music stuff as well? Like, did you go to uni or any of that stuff, or was that not applicable? Or
I was I used to be in the choir in the Anglican Cathedral in Liverpool.
Right.
So I mean, I was like 7 when I joined there. You sort of do a little audition, like with your little 7-year-old voice, and then, but then you're there. Especially when you do like a year or two of just going on the weekends, but then after that, you're just there all the time, really, after school and Saturday and Sunday. And there was obviously a lot of theory and things like that. But I think it's mainly you're just covered in music. It's just happening all the time. And I think your brain at that age is just so receptive to it, isn't it?
Yeah,
that
of course.
The main thing that I remember from it is just the power of making that noise with all of those people. And
it's I mean, we I don't know if you heard that we in the Anglican Cathedral actually we held the Boat of Hope project, and before there was a big load of stuff, and actually I've done a few podcasts on that, so you can check them out if you want. But there was before we were setting up, I remember going in, and just at the bit right at the back of the cathedral, the choir were either warming up or cooling down, whatever they do, but they were just making all these amazing noises, and like I just kind of had to abandon the setup, and I was just stood there like watching in a daze. It was just such an amazing feeling, and
it is amazing, and like I say, their standards are very high.
Of course,
as they should be, because it took 70, 80 years to build that building, didn't it? Generations of people built it.
I think start to finish, the completion of it was something in the hundreds. I don't know how accurate that is, but I understood that it was a few hundred years or something to finish, the whole thing.
Yeah, and just the craftsmanship that goes into it and how important it is. The standards should be really high. So I think that the main thing from that was just being addicted to music, to be honest, and being involved with your tiny little part of making it. I sort of think that's the important bit of all this stuff, because a career in music, it really isn't, most of the time it's quite hard, and you're constantly, there's a lot of anxiety to it, isn't there? And there's a lot of just lifting equipment. There's more lifting things than I would have thought. When you go on tour, a lot less sleeping.
Oh God.
And I think if you got into it because you wanted to be famous, I don't know how far you would get, but if you get into it because you just love it, then that's the bit that pulls you through when it's rubbish, when it's not going very well.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. I mean, there's something to be said. So sort of going back to the labels thing that we were talking about, I remember not dealing with, but I was sort of on the sidelines of a project that was financed with a lot of money. There was a lot of label money pouring in, and there were a few things going wrong, and the artists themselves weren't quite happy with it. And they were saying, they want me to, record like this, or they want me to do this or something like that. And the labels at the time solution was more money, just throw money at it, kind of thing. Yeah. And over time, the artists just kind of stopped. What you said, the love of it was starting to just peter out. Like, I'm really hating this now. This is now a corporate enterprise. This is no longer like my thing. Do you think, in the beginning, you have to finance things yourself. You have to spend money on studio time or on getting a van and driving the country and all rehearsal space or whatever it is. You have to spend that cash. Do you think the love of it is the way to motivate yourself to do it and all that stuff?
I just think it's the only way,
Yeah.
to be honest, because like I say, it actually isn't that, there is very little glamour to it. It really isn't there. And it's, and there is just a lot of, like I say, there's just a lot of it not going very well. You know, things are not going very, very well at all. And then suddenly they kind of are. And even the bit where it's going very well, it is very hard to mentally process and to relax into. Even that has its own anxiety, I think, doesn't it? You know, I always think, even, you know, when the record labels first start getting interested in you and it's sort of going by any measure as well as it's ever been for you, you know, it's still hard to sleep, isn't it? Because you're excited or whatever, and not being able to sleep is just not a very nice experience. Even that excitement is hard because you don't have any practice for it, and probably no one else you know at that point has any advice to give you. There's no one else. The likelihood is there is somebody else in your friend group who's also on a major record label that can just say to you, "Here's what helped me." So you're just sort of flying the plane while you're building it a little bit, aren't you? And it's just
completely.
And also there's a side of it where all of a sudden you've got a record label and a publisher and a manager and a lawyer and an accountant. Your accountant knows how much money you've got, you know, even things like that.
Yeah.
And you don't know, you don't really know your own music yet, but you certainly don't know how to be responsible for all of those people, and you don't want to let anyone down. And this sort of pressure that's there, I think that pressure is something that you learn to deal with, isn't it? You know, as it
goes on. Yeah.
So to try to make something, because all we're trying to do is make some art that's actually good, but to try to make good art in the first place is very hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very unlikely. How many songs do you write that turn out to be any good? Very few.
Well, that's it.
You write.
Yeah.
So to make it under that sudden crushing pressure of expectation, and you are aware of how much money the record label are spending, and they send you out to LA, you know, and you've never been there, and you're there for 5 weeks, and they're texting you every day, how's the session going? And it's not going well. And you know that even tomorrow they're going to text you and you're going to have to say, I didn't get anything, you know.
Yeah. I've been there. I did a series of sessions in London, and so, you know, someone was paying for it, and it was to the tune of a few £1,000 each day, you know, and wow. Yeah. At the end of it all, I really just was like, I hate this. I don't like any of it.
What was your sort of day-to-day experience with that? Because it's a funny thing when it's just songwriting with new people you've never met too, isn't it?
Of course.
You know, because you're
being open to that process that they're bringing, and maybe it isn't the process that you like or you know, want to do, or How did you find that in terms of sort of co-writing and stuff like that? I found it really difficult when I was a lot younger. So because, and it'd be interesting to hear your take on this, but I found that I was writing, oh God, it must have been, you know, over the course of a month, I'd churn out 100 songs easily. And it was just, and they were shit. They were like on like little, you know, a cassette tape or just like a little bit of GarageBand on one stem or something, you know, using the mic. And but content wise, I was just like churning. And that was what initially got like a lot of interest for me, for like, you know, being a part of other projects and things like that, because I was writing a lot. But I found that when it came to, we love this, you need to now go and write with someone else to finish your own music. I had a lot of resistance to that, admittedly. I kind of had this feeling of like, well, why? Because I feel these are done. I don't want anyone to change them. I think these are done, and I want them to be recorded as they are, and that's it. And I'm not entertaining anything else. And it was only years later that I really understood that actually the collaboration thing is more than just a, hey, we want to improve your song. It's about opening doors and about saying, well, hey, you know, if you write with this guy, he will also record it at a much better standard. And then he actually does have a door that opens into some management or a record label or something like that. And it just took me years to understand that it was like, no, co-writes aren't necessarily a labor of love. Co-writes can often just be like, it's a strategy game where it's like you're writing with someone because down the line, that will lead to the next thing or whatever. But what do you think? I mean, do you have a similar experience or not?
It's very tough, isn't it? I think again, I think I've been doing this. I count it as professionally, sort of from the point that I signed the record deal, I suppose. And I think that was about 8 years ago. And just I'm so glad I'm 8 years in, to be honest, because like the amount of stuff that I didn't know is horrible to think about. I sort of like, you can see why. So it's almost like a load of socks get thrown into a washing machine, isn't it? And there's loads of them, and you just get tumbled around, and then somehow you just come out the other side, and everyone else has gotten lost in there. And it's just this. You just get your moment of luck, I think, to get through that early part of it when you don't really have a fan base yet. All you have is maybe 3 or 4 songs, and maybe you just manage to get one of those to see you through to the next bit.
Yeah.
And I realize now how much luck that part takes.
Would you say it is just luck, or do because I know there's people ask me all the time, how do you get your fan base? How do you get that happening? So it's not just a socials game or something, but how do you actually, go out, get the gigs, hoover the streets? What do you do? How do you do it?
Well, this is the strange thing, and I'm sure it's the answer that most people will give you if they're being honest. I don't really know.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of luck, luck is just so important, unfortunately, because the one part I think but you'll only get luck if you work really hard. You know what I mean? That's the only way luck will happen, if you try really hard. But you still need a moment of luck, even if it's like just and quite often that moment of luck is one person hearing it, isn't
just hearing it,
then playing it to someone else. Or maybe it's like, the difference between your song being on a TV show or not is, or even on, for example, Radio 1, it's likely to be one person that says,
for sure.
We'll play that.
And that moment when you do get the email or something, someone at Radio 1's listened to your track, or something, you're like, have they really?
Yeah. And when you go back through all the moments of luck that had to happen to get you to this point, you couldn't manufacture that. I always just say, honestly, you have to work as hard as you can with it. You have to be really nice to people, which shouldn't be, you should do that anyway, but that's a big part of it. And then just be lucky, and it's disappointing because you do want to help people, don't you? As far as you can.
Of course.
There isn't a magic formula to it. It's just right place at the right time and trying really hard.
Definitely. I think there's a friend of mine, I don't know if you know him, Rich Turvey?
Yeah.
Producer Rich Turvey. Yeah, so he's
I've never he's never engineered or produced anything that I've done, but I do know.
Interesting. Yeah. I wondered if maybe your dad knew him or met him.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Because obviously Parr Street and Kempston Street and all that stuff. So, but I remember Rich sort of saying, it was a few years ago now, but I remember him saying, like, look, it's kind of one of them luck of the draw things, exactly like what you just said. But he sort of said, but having said that, it's about being match fit when the opportunity arises. So like, it's no good, and the door opens tomorrow morning and you haven't got your demos ready, or you haven't got your voice is in bits or whatever. It's like, you always have to be just kind of ready for that, oh, go on, I will listen to what Mike's doing. Let's see what he's done. And then you're like, fuck, where is it? You don't want to be that. You want to be match ready all the time. I actually think match fitness, it's a phrase that I think I find it a lot easier to compartmentalize everything like it's football, because that's the one thing I do understand a bit about. But match fitness is huge, isn't it? I think it's like songwriting. You don't do it for a little while. It's a bit like when you don't play footy for ages and you just come back to it and you're terrible at it. You don't have, like, you're just not match fit at that point. Yeah.
And I think it's that's why you have to write songs every day, isn't it? While you're saying you wrote 100 and you're just so match fit at that point.
Yeah. And you just get to know. Yeah. Do you have any sort of particular process or anything for your songwriting process?
Yeah, I am. It took me a while it takes you a while to figure your voice out a little bit, doesn't it? I think you do go from, I'm just writing songs in my bedroom to just impress myself, or maybe one girl once, you know, and then when the record labels get involved, you're suddenly trying to impress them, aren't you? You know, which isn't really a healthy place to be doing it from. But of course, you're going to do that, especially because the setup of it with A&R people, ultimately, you're going to have to write something that A&R person is going to then let you record ultimately. And that's tricky, trying to write for one specific person like that.
You're almost writing to a brief, aren't you?
Yeah, and I don't think that's healthy, really. And then once you sort of have released a few songs and you sort of get quite a lot of feedback, ultimately, you sort of figure out what it is that people, that you figure out what it is that you are already.
Yeah.
That is resonating with people, and then you can just be that. You realize it helps a lot, doesn't it? I know that there's a thing of you should just write songs for yourself, but well, don't do music as a career if that's what you want to do. Of course, they should matter to you, but really, you're writing it for everyone else. Is the point?
For sure. There's a whole chain of events, that has to combine and wrap around that one song, and if it's to go somewhere. I've said this to a lot of people where it's like, look, I think you can write for yourself, and that you can do that forever till you're dead. But if you're trying to make it fit somewhere, like in a particular radio station or a particular A&R guy, like you said, or a manager, or even just even some venues, like venues like, we do not have any artists in this venue that play indie music. We only play rock music, or something. It's like that happens. And you're so, like I say early on, you're just so worried about letting everyone down, and worried about like having a record deal but it not working out, that you do end up trying to, you listen to a song on the radio and go, right, well, that's what I should try to do. But it's not the way to do it, is it? You just make things derivative, something that's a worse version of that song that's on the radio, I suppose. And I guess the longer you go with it, the more you manage to put yourself back in there, I think. The less you worry about what record labels are thinking, and the more you do go, I feel like I have a foundation to just to go back to your bedroom songwriting, I suppose. So it takes a while to get your confidence, I think, doesn't it? Especially when you're doing songwriting sessions. And for sure.
You go to LA or London and you walk in and there's all these gold records on the wall.
Oh man, I found LA to be an intimidating, a great place, amazing place, but an intimidating place. And one of the very first people that I met in LA was a lawyer who's my lawyer now, but he's just a really magnetic personality, and like, hey, my name's an American guy, and like very obviously very successful and big roster of clients that are A-list and all this stuff, and I was just like, fuck, like what am I bringing into this? But they want that from you.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing to work out, because you do walk in, don't you, and you go, you know what? You guys are way better than me at this, so I'm just going to shut up, because if I say anything, it'll get in the way of the boss idea you were about to have, so I'll just shut up, which is why you don't get anything, because, of course, that's not what they want, songwriters. They want to just help you be you, but to some sort of mass audience, I suppose. It just takes a while to walk into someone else's house to have platinum records on their wall and go, right, this is what we're doing today, guys.
It's so tough. It's so.
Oh my gosh.
Do you think there's an element of like that imposter syndrome then? Where you sort of feel like, God, what am I doing here?
I think imposter syndrome is a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because from what I could tell, everyone has it. Even people all the way up, there's most successful people. It seems like it just is a constant thing. And I wonder if it's just because we have an idea in our heads of how I would feel when that happens, when you have, I don't know, however many Spotify streams, or even if you sign a record deal, or if you get a gold record or something. I think maybe we have this concept of how that will feel, and then it doesn't feel like that. So then you go, okay, then I mustn't be doing like it mustn't be
the
for
thing.
me, and I mustn't be doing this right, or something like that. It's interesting.
Do you know what I'm really interested to hear everybody's take on it, but like what you've said there, I know for a fact that I had exactly that feeling of like, God, when I do this, this will happen. And I remember when, I don't know, take anything like, you know, the first time BBC Introducing plays a song or something, and you think, oh, now I'm going to have that. And actually I was like, no, it just feels like a Tuesday. Nothing's happened.
Yeah, totally. And especially because we don't even make really physical versions of, we don't really make anything we can hold, do we, in music? I sort of imagine if you build a house, you get to look at the house and go, here is the house. You can sort of punch the wall if you want. It's there. But music, you spend all this time making it and you finally finish it. And then it comes out and the experience is, and now it's out. And then your clock just is ticking and nothing changes. And you're like, you know, we don't get to hug the thing we've made. And that's it. You know, that's something to learn, isn't it?
Definitely.
A little moment with it and just to sit down and go, you've made this thing.
You've done well. Yeah. Be proud of your achievements.
Just take a moment with it. You obviously, it's important to keep trying to build and do more, but still take a second to appreciate what it is that you've created.
Definitely.
Because otherwise I think you just get burnt out. You never really take if you never take the moments and take joy from those moments, then all it is hard work and anxiety ultimately, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a good, you know, because anxiety is a big thing in the music industry in particular. And I think it's predominantly because of that. It's that, you know, constant expectation of you or someone else or your thing that you've made or something. Do you think, you know, that going back to the beginning, that humility, the love of it, the being able to sort of appreciate what you've done, do you think that goes a long way to fending off anxiety and things like that?
I think so. I think, you know, the thing to remember is that you're self-employed. So it's the same anxiety of any self-employed trader, ultimately. I don't mean to demystify it at all.
Yeah.
But like,
I want that. Yeah.
If I did any job, you know, if I was, I don't know, any self-employed job, you can feel like the floor can just fall out from you at any moment. Ultimately, that maybe the income that you have on this project isn't going to continue, you know. You're also trying to come up with something that might help someone's life, you know, and make their days better by writing music. So I suppose you're just trying to balance those things out, aren't you? You're just trying to learn how to not be overwhelmed by all this stuff and just set, you know, ultimately it's a low level anxiety that's always there, isn't it? And you're just trying to I guess just block it out for a moment, even for a moment, because humans we're anxious, aren't we? It's how we work, unfortunately. So I guess you're just trying to block it out for the moment, take the rays of light that you can and try to create something that will make someone's day better, I suppose. That's not to say I used to live in Canada, and that was great, and I'm really grateful to them, but I moved back to Liverpool 2 years ago. And I was I really wanted to be back in Liverpool. And now that I'm back, it's been so much easier just to appreciate the day-to-day existence, you know?
Nice. Good.
What it is that the job that I get to do, the fact that I get to talk to you at 11 o'clock on Friday, you know, I shouldn't be at work really. The fact that I get to do this and I can go and see my friend Ollie a bit later to drop a guitar around, and I'll go to the footy in a couple of weeks, and you know what I mean? Of course. Those things, I'll see my granddad and he'll ask how the music's going, you know, and that's really helped, I think, to just appreciate stuff a bit better.
Definitely.
Not just only be doing music, like do music and get to do the other parts too.
That's a really interesting point, that, mate. Yeah, definitely. Just stepping away from that for a second, to what extent do you think, you know, all that training in the choir has kind of led to you doing what you do now? You know, do you think it's honing your musical skills has led to this moment, or did it have nothing to do with it and it was all just luck, as you were saying before? Or what do you think?
Well, I think it just makes you, I think, you know, the job that I get to do, the fact that I get to talk to you at 11 o'clock on Friday, you know, I shouldn't be at work really. The fact that I get to do this and I can go and see my friend Ollie a bit later to drop a guitar around, and I'll go to the footy in a couple of weeks, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think it just makes you your experience of music just becomes more of a spiritual one, I think. Obviously, because religion is involved there, but I think it's more just the sheer power of that.
The human spirit, yeah.
Yeah, and a building that's that big, and making that noise, I just get you, I think. And the other thing is because I got to work in a recording studio, and my dad was an engineer and a record producer, so I was just in there a lot.
Yeah.
And just thought, I think there's an underrated side of being in a music studio as a kid, is the fact that it's music that is louder than you will ever be allowed to listen to it outside of a studio. Those speakers are bigger than anywhere else.
Yeah.
You would never be allowed to play music that loud. And it's also a bit rate quality that's so much higher.
Yeah.
Than
Fidelity.
For example. Yeah, the fidelity of it is so high. It's like at least twice the quality, isn't it? And then we listen to MP3s on Spotify, but you have this like, what experience, And then I just thought, when you're a kid, and I still think this, people in bands are just the coolest people.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be around that, I think, just to be part of that somehow, even if it's just making cups of tea, which is what I used to do down in there and stuff. And I think, ultimately that's the stuff which becomes immovable in you. That's the thing, you're never going to stop wanting that. I think.
For sure.
And I think if you can make music for that purpose, try not to think of it as a job too much, and just remember that you just love it.
Yeah.
Your brain is so open to that stuff when you're a kid, isn't it? And it just gets stuck in there, and then now here you are.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Well, good luck, and
thank you.
Lovely to